Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jean Provance. Welcome to the show again, Jean.
Hi, thanks for
Looking,
having me
looking forward to
back
this
again.
conversation. Back again.
Yeah.
Jean's got a great memory. And last time, halfway through the conversation, my roof light was open and the rain was dripping on me. And Jean remembered that. I had no memory of that whatsoever. But we're sealed up today, ladies and gentlemen. There is going to be no rain to stop play. So,
Great.
Jean, fellow adoptee and a social worker. And Jean was just saying to me that social workers do not have any specialist training for, they don't recognize adoptee trauma as a specialist thing that they need to get training in, right?
Well, yeah, I would say it is a specialty area of clinical practice, the same way as substance abuse, as eating disorders, as dissociation. That, yeah, grad school is going to get you through, get you started if your focus is clinical work, get you into a generalist practice. And most of our states have licensing that requires you to do continuing education on, where you're interested in, and they kind of break it down. But I would say absolutely your basic right out of graduate school training is not enough.
No.
Right. And even like some of the trauma training, right? And I'm sure there are other EMDR therapists that are adoptees that would say exactly the same thing, is that your basic training is not enough.
No. So,
Right.
one of the reasons that we're not getting what we need, listeners, is because the system doesn't recognize this need for a specialism. So it's a structural thing that we're talking about here.
It's all structural, right? Our child welfare laws are structural, institutional, right? And we are in a place where now we're hearing about intergenerational trauma and perpetuating cyclical traumas. So, and I think I've said, since I've been to graduate school, talking and doing some supervision for folks since like towards getting their independent clinical license, the courses are doing better, right? We're not teaching ethno-cultural issues. We're teaching racism, and calling it what it is, and recognizing developmental trauma, that there's a lot. Trauma informed is great. I love that we're infusing that in, but if you really want to be a trauma specialist, you've got a lot more work to do post graduating.
Yeah. So when you're talking to potential therapists, uh, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that they know this specialism, right?
Yeah.
And talk to Jean. Put a link in the show notes, and there's also a link of adoptees who are also therapists. We'll
Yeah.
put that link in the show notes too. But today we're going to talk about healing from a personal perspective. So, what does healing mean to you, Jean?
So, right. And I have this like kind of, you have Jean the therapist, and then you have Jean the mom out in the world, and it's all me, but I'm sure my kids and my friends see a very different side of me than like people see me clinically, right? And when I'm thinking about like, is healing like a like start at A, go through B, C, D, E, F, all the way through Z, like a just stop beginning end process, I would say probably not, right? But I would say, are you in distress every day, every hour? How much, like, how big does it feel? Are you heavy all the time? Comparatively to like, are you happy? Do you feel good and content most of the time? Right? Anniversaries are hard, right? For just humans in general, right? So like the anniversary of my grandfather's passing is coming up in April. About a month, probably almost exactly a month. I'm going to be deeply sad, and I'm going to cry, which is part of how I'm like, I'm in a pretty good place because it's real grief. And I can be in a place to be like, I am sad. I am okay to cry. I'm okay to be like ugly crying. boogery, snotty, and like tomato face and cry because it's sad, right? He was very important in my life, right? And he was one of the people that was protective and took good care of me.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, yeah, that day is going to be hard, but it would be hard for anyone. Right. So, there's like normative emotional experiences. Right. And the difference now is I can cry about it. I am not, I
Yeah.
need to suck it up and be strong all the time. And then be weighed down by the stuff I'm carrying and never talking about, never expressing, or don't have language to express.
Okay. So
Right? Does that make sense?
it does. If I can sum it up from uh, in a three word soundbite, grace with grief.
Yeah. Like I'm okay most of the time, right? I came out of a really intense training, 3 days, 6, I think it's totaled 7 hours a day, but we had an hour for lunch. And they, put you in small groups, go do some personal work with other therapists who are complete strangers. And it's just heavy because you're sharing and you're like rotating through. So it's heavy, right? And I'm like, oh, not working tonight. How to poke my own stuff because everybody has stuff they carry, right? But like being able to say, you know what? I'm not working tonight. I'm going to lay on the couch. I'm going to have empanadas because that is like, I don't feel good food, right? And to be okay with, hey, what do you want for dinner? I do not want to have to choose what I'm having for dinner. Please pick something for me. Okay. And to have a partner, to have my husband be like, I've got it. Right. And he just ordered, and I was like, oh, yeah, empanadas. This is great. I feel good with empanadas. Right. And we could totally get into like stuff your face, stuff your feels. Sure. But I did a whole lot of emoting prior to that and did need some relief. Right. So you can be taking grace with emoting and feeling strong, not so pleasant emotions, and take space to be like, all right, I'm going to do a little bounce back and feel satiated, feel full, right? And the rested and nourished, or nothing else works.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm talking about healing, it's not static, right? I draw, I journal, I walk, I garden, I have pets, right? And yes, I like to be busy, and I totally acknowledge part of that is trauma response. Right. But I can be honest about that too, to say, like, yeah, you don't become a trauma specialized therapist if you don't have some kind of lived experience where you've sat on the other side of the couch too. Not just like sitting in a therapist chair is easy.
Yeah.
By comparison, that feels easier a lot.
Why?
It's not my stuff. Anything that they're bringing to me isn't mine, right? It could be similar, right? And I understand like the emotion of it, but and there's a lot of like weird things since COVID floating around with therapy where I've had, newly minted licensees under supervision who are like, therapy can't take more than a year. And I'm like, well, who said that? What are you talking about? And they're like, what? And I was like, evidence-based is not the be all end all of treatment. If you need more and the person is telling you they need more than, 12 months, it didn't take just 12 months to get where it's at, generally speaking. Like, give them some grace, right? And I am very honest with people. I was in therapy for years through graduate school, in the beginning of my career, right? Really ugly crying about it, about just like, I know what happened. I was adopted. My mother left me in the hospital. The social worker took me from the hospital, met my parents at the adoption agency, and handed me over, and they took me home 7 days later. Well, that doesn't seem terrible. Like, why am I an anxious mess? Why this? Why that? Right. But if I'm looking like what else makes any sense, right? if we're looking at that, it's like, well, no, that you get to like acknowledge that that was a really big deal, right? I'm an adoptee first, right? That's like cornerstone to my identity, right? I'm an adoptee. I'm a mom. I am a social worker. I am a trauma specialized therapist. I'm a play therapist. I'm all of those things. But first, the first thing that happened was tragedy. And to not look at it as the tragedy that it is, like, does lock you up from expressing what's going on. Right. So taking the space and the time for me to say, like, okay, I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that that is the thing, right? Because that's like my whole identity in a nutshell growing up. So there had to be something else, but there's not, right? So it makes sense. Okay, now I have some language, but like making the internal connections isn't like simple and straightforward where you're just like, all right, 12 sessions of CBT, have a happy life, I'm good.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work that way, right? And I would say if you have a therapist that's not willing to say, like, yeah, I had to do therapy on my own stuff, I have somebody to talk to, I have consultation groups and things to take care of myself, I'd run away from them. Like if I was looking for a therapist and I said, hey, have you been to therapy? Right. You don't have to give me details. Are you willing to go back if something happens to you? And they're cagey about it, they're off my list. I want somebody to be very, very real and authentic and be honest that, like, you know what, I still have a therapist. Or, you know what, I took a break. And if I need to go back, I'm totally willing to go back. I can find someone. I know how to access those things. I'm doing consultation, right? Because really, people looking for someone who's adoption competent, they're kind of looking for a unicorn, right? But as a therapist, I'd be looking for someone who is not my professional colleague, that I don't work with, who treats therapists and is adoption competent, and like I'm looking for like the pink unicorn among unicorns or something. If I like, and I watch carefully when I don't feel good, right? Am I actually physically sick? Because sometimes we are. Did I hit like an anniversary point where like, oh yeah, this is just emotional stuff? Or is something else really going on that like I need someone to talk to, right? And needing someone to talk to doesn't mean I'm not healed, right? But I'm a human being in a crazy world in process of existing and being okay, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And a lot of the like healing things in my world have to do with expression and feeling connected and authentic, right? Art is very healing for me. It is grounding. It can be grounding or like dissociating where like I've checked out from day to day, but it's also very grounding because it's giving me space to just be totally present with what I'm doing. Right.
Yeah.
And it's very funny because Disney does Festival of the Arts in like February or March or so. And like it's way too expensive to go down there. So we do family art time. We have farts at home and the kids will now like they're old enough where they can draw and spend like time where we're like together but doing our thing, and it's quiet and really nice to see them like creating their own stuff and having like a tool set that I'm not like doing therapy to my own kids, but like they're building tools for themselves, because that's our job as parents, is to make them have the tools they need to survive alone in the world as adults and be okay.
So what healing moments come to mind, Jean?
Changing my name, right? That was a really big one.
Can I take you? Can I take you back? Changing your name.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that you realised that you wanted to change your name, or can you talk us through the story to that, not just the conclusion?
So I remember I was taking an artist therapy class in my undergrad, and we had to do some kind of oral presentation on a topic and how you'd apply art therapy. And I was just like, I'm going to do an adoption. Why did I know to do that? Because I was like, I don't know what you would do, because I wasn't coding it as like traumatic in any way. But I'm like, well, there's got to be something on like foster care or something. I'm curious about this. And it was the first time I had like really like heard adoption as trauma because I was like so incredibly anxious and homesick away at college for the first time. Like I had the luxury of like my mom had a house that she had built and we lived there my entire growing up years. And kind of at that point, also finding the letters from my birth mother, right, where she referenced Jean. And it was like, what? Whoa. Huh? Okay. I had another name. And then as I'm like trying to track it forward a little, I'm looking at like, I took a grief loss and bereavement course where we had to write our own obituary for the class. And I just remember sitting there and being like, well, Jean was born and didn't live, and Kristen lived but wasn't born. So I spent this time of like, Kristen is Jean, Jean is Kristen, Kristen is Jean, Jean is Kristen, and trying to like put together like parts of self and like reconcile like, am I who I was meant to be? Like, does that exist? Right? Because it's total like mental gymnastics to be like, well, if I had grown up with my family in Wisconsin, that would be a very, very different experience, right? Like you can hear a Midwestern, like North up there, almost Fargo accent compared to like, I am very New Jersey with like, and just even like wrapping my brain around like, wait, I have an accent? What are you talking about? Like, because we didn't travel much, right? So I remember doing this obituary activity and the professor writing back, I've never had anyone write like this. I've never had anyone do this, right? Because it ultimately was like, well, if Jean was born but never lived and Kristen lived but was never born, who's here? Who are you mourning? Right. And it's all that like identity search for self stuff. And much of like my final, I don't know if you would call it a capstone, the art piece that was put in the show to graduate with my undergraduate visual arts degree, I had taken the various birth certificates I had and sliced them and wove them together. So they were like up on the wall, like 18 by 24 larger, like big, woven together. And there's multiple birth certificates, right? There's my first amended one. There's the one that was sealed that has my original name and my mother's name, and then a second amended one that puts my stepfather on it. And in all of the birth certificates, weaving them together, the person's name you see is my adoptive mother. Right. And I had photocopied them onto transparency. So there was a like kind of like a drawer looking, so you could see right through them to the wall. Like you could read them, but you could see through them. And like she had no idea what I was doing because I was a sculpting major. And so in putting it up on the wall and like laying it out there, and I think we called it like identity politics, very arty kind of thing. But I remember her like standing at a distance and standing there staring and then like cocking her head a little bit and being like, I can see my name. And I'm like, okay, like, right. And you could see like the wheels were going, but she really never said more than that. But it was like she was clearly putting something together. And we never really talked about it because I don't even know that she'd remember it. But it wasn't like an angry response because I was very anxious with her to come in and look at it. Right. To like, I put this information out there because it's not just me, it's her too. Right. Like it is interwoven with other people. But it was all effort to like, who am I, and connect and be authentic in myself. So in graduate school, when they were like, well, we're going to do roll call, just let us know how you want to be called, I kind of tried it on in graduate school, having them call me Jean. And lots of people had a lot of reaction to it. And I'm like, but it's not your name. Like, it's my name. Like, deal. Like, it's mine, right? You don't get to erase me. I came with a whole lengthy history that you tried to erase. And it was totally like standard practice, right? I'm not faulting my parents for being like, well, but how do we make you part of our family other than to give you a name, right? Like the logic on their end, the like wanting to bring in and care and love totally makes sense. But I'm like, okay, but you never asked me. And yeah, I was a baby. Okay. But I came to you as a whole person with a name and a history, and you don't get to erase that. Right. And it was utter chaos and upheaval. Right. And I had tried on Kristen, Jean, KJ for a while, like for people that really were struggling to go from Kristen to Jean, because I had zero problem attending to it. And like when somebody called Jean, to turn around and respond to them, like there was never any issue attending to my name, which I don't know what to make of it, but I thought was kind of like, oh, cool. Like that's not an issue, because if you've always been called this for 24 or so years, are you going to recognize to like answer? And it wasn't like, because that was the one my husband brought up. He was like, well, are you going to even answer to that if people call you Jean? And I'm like, you have to try it. Right. So I kind of tried it on and then had saved up, because it was 2000. I graduated in 2008 from graduate school. And in 2010, I got a lawyer to do it, because you actually have to appear in court and they publish it in the newspaper. So you're not like committing fraud or trying to like evade your student loan debt and things like that. But like I had to appear in court, and my whole thing was I didn't tell everybody up front when and where and how, because I was like, I don't want anyone to come and contest this and make it an argument, because it is my choice. I didn't get to choose my family. I didn't choose adoption. I didn't choose anything. And the only thing I can take and claim is me. This is my name. Right. And I did not change my last name. I didn't take my husband's name. Like, this is my birth name. It is my name. Right. Very, very few people call me Kristen. Like, I don't even know that I'd answer to it. And it was funny because one of the nights after the training, my son had looked at my husband's YouTube, and there's like old videos where he's like, who's KJ? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And he was like, oh yeah, right, because he's heard bits and pieces of the story, right? He's asked questions, and it's usually like, wait a minute, can you give me a one? Like that's like the underlying when he's asking questions, right? So it like it ripples through things, but like in my mind, nobody has the right to erase my identity and who I am and where I came from, no matter how ugly it might be, right? Because I'm sure there are other adoptees that came out of other circumstances that were, you know, bad, but nobody had the right to erase me, erase my history, erase who I am. So conceptually, it was like, I can take this and I'm not going to let anyone stop me. And people were very angry. I didn't tell them up front that I was changing my name. And I was like, I'm not going to, I don't owe you an explanation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're hurt, but that is your problem. That is not mine.
Yeah.
Because I did this for me.
But that's why I was laughing, really. You know, like I'm sitting there listening to you, Jean, and I'm thinking, why did I laugh there? Do I need to explain why I laughed? But so here I am. I explained why I laughed. But you get that, right? You get it.
Yeah.
So what did that give you? What did that give you, that name change?
Well, I mean, because this is me, right? I can't change my experiences. I can't change so many things, right? But like part of my hope was I get to have like that authenticity, right? Like my name matches my face. I totally will say like there's a lot of intersections in adoption where like we are marginalized as adoptees because professionals don't understand the impact, because there's gaslighting questions of like, oh, well, you went to a good home, right? And the expectation in the question is that we're going to reaffirm them. And this was affirming me. So there was like a piece of confidence in making that shift. Because when I was working at a community mental health center, they actually went toe to toe with the insurance company to make, right? It's very easy to change a last name on it on the insurance card, but the system that the insurance company had was not allowing for the first name change because it's not typical. And I just remember being like, I changed my name. I gave you the documents, and it's causing a problem at my medical doctor's office because they don't know how to bill for like a, you know, I go see the doctor for a checkup and they have to like make the claim match, but it doesn't match. And the administrative director was like it was the hardest one to get done. But I just basically was like, listen, you got to figure it out. Like, I don't care who you get on the phone. I don't care how you do it. But like, I should not have to worry about it because I walked into the Social Security office, presented my documents, and they went, okay, you'll get a new one in the mail. I walked in with that to the DMV, and they went, oh, okay, and gave me my documents, right? And every place else was just like, okay, cool, like fax us a copy, fine, as long as you're telling us it matches your birth date and your social security number, okay. But the insurance system was very, very difficult where like they had to like, I guess almost go in and rewrite the programming
Yeah.
for it because like the techs on the phone, like they're following a script, they don't know what to do, and the supervisor above them's never run into it, and right. So like there was
It's that.
absolute ripples elsewhere. Like my adopted brother was so offended, so incredibly offended, yelling and screaming. And I was in a place where I could be like, I'm not getting screamed at on the phone anymore. I'm hanging up and actually hang up the phone and not just take that kind of like verbal abuse of like, you're screaming into a telephone. I have to hold that to my ear. No, I'm not. Right. I definitely missed a number of Christmases and, you know, adoptive family events because they couldn't tolerate their stuff. But that was not about me. That's them. Right. Because they're also viewing this as rejection of them. But like, it's not my job to be your therapist too. Like, this is me, deal with it. So there's like at every turn having to like meet that was very empowering. Right. And then there's also this like in that a place of privilege, I'm white, my adopted family is white, they have brown hair and green eyes, so I blend pretty well. Like I don't stand out, so I can not say anything. Like I can hide in plain sight in that regard, right? So there's that privilege spot of I'm not conspicuous compared to like my like transracial, transnational adoptees that like it's very clear they're not biologically connected, but it lets me be authentic, and it matches, it's congruent to me.
So authenticity and congruity,
Congruent, yeah,
big themes. I'm just
yeah.
wondering, and this. So my take on the name thing, right? For me, my personal experience on that was I got a piece of paper and I was expecting to just read my birth mother's name,
Mm-hmm.
but underneath it had my name. It had my first name too, as well.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, I've had, that's kind of curious. I've had two names. If I've had two names, I can't actually be my name. Names are just, just labels. They're not who I am, and they're not who we are. They are a label. In my case, put on other by other people. I mean, you went back to a
Mm-hmm.
previous label that was
Right.
authentic, that felt authentic to you. That I didn't. That you know, I didn't. That didn't. Idea didn't even cross my mind. My mind went straight to some kind of weird, pretty way out. Way out
Mm-hmm. Well, and
thought. Really, I'm not my name. And yet that
right,
seems
but it's so defining too.
well, yeah, it is, and unless it isn't, it
Right,
wasn't for
unless it
me.
isn't.
It wasn't. It
Right.
wasn't for
But
me.
I'm trying to think of the name. I feel like it's Adopted for the Life of Me documentary where like the woman they were interviewing does this like back and forth. I am, but I'm not. I am, but I'm not. I am, but I'm not. Right. And to me, it was the only, like, it was the thing I could take.
Yeah.
Like, this is mine. And it's like one of the first things we get is a name. Like, the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child says we're entitled to have a name for a way to be called. Right.
Yeah.
So to me, like, if my mother believed she couldn't give me the things to meet my needs, the one thing she could give me was a name. Right. And I know there are people who were not allowed to name their babies, that were not allowed to see their babies, that were not allowed to hold their babies, that did everything to put it away and not connect. Right. But again, that's their journey and this is mine. Right. So it really was like everything feels fragmented and in pieces. So how do I put it together? It's all like, if I look back at like searching and all of those things that we do as adoptees, a lot of it was, how do I be authentically me?
Yeah.
How do I connect to me? Who am I?
And it's the personal. So what we're talking about here, listeners, in my opinion, right, it is a, a personal definition of healing,
Yeah.
and a personal path to healing.
Yeah. Right. Like if you're like totally secure in your adopted name or like getting married and changing your name, like you do you. Go be happy in the world. Go enjoy yourself. If that's how you're like, define you how you want. Right. Because I like it, there's power to it. But like to me, it's something worth to explore for people. Like, why is it important? Why isn't it important? Why does this feel the way it does?
And the exploration is actually more important than than the point that
Right.
we arrive at. If we're
Yeah,
listening to somebody
it's
else's
the
story,
journey. It's the
yeah,
journey,
it's the journey.
right? Like if I just wanted the ending, I don't have to read the book. I can just read the last couple of paragraphs and I know the ending, but like how did I get there? Right?
And we all have to go on that different. We have to go on that different
Right.
journey
Because
and honor the journey.
it's your life. Like I'm trying to like I'm so like and I've decided that this must be like a reaction to adoption to be really poor at like putting people in their contexts historically, but like and I can't even like I can't place it at all of like this is your one and precious life, what will you do with it? Right, there's no redos, there's no going back, it's a one-way trip. This is my one and precious life, this is it. So what am I going to do? Right, I can feel all the emotions and I'm glad for the work that I did around being able to feel anything. Right, because if you mute one emotion you mute them all. Right, if I can't cry and feel sad, I'm not going to feel the height of joy either. Right,
That's what medication does, isn't it? Funnily enough, it takes
so
it numbs. It takes it
well,
takes away the highs
it's
and the
trying to
lows.
get you to a place of balance, right? I've made quite a shift about medicines, right? Um, if you are constantly in a state where you want to die and you're trying to figure out how to die, yeah, I need you somewhere to be able to tolerate therapy to help you at all, right? There's absolutely a place for medication. I don't care what tools you use on your journey. That is your choice. And I am not going to take your right to consent and choose. I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to make the recommendation other than, hey, you probably should talk to your doctor about those things because I'm not the doctor, right? But the whole thought would be to bring you to a balanced enough place so you can actually tolerate doing the deeper therapy work. But yeah, it does kind of keep you in that place as best I know. I mean, I think that's a psychiatrist question, right? But if you're so blue and down, you can't get out of bed, right? You may not be able to reach for the phone or the tablet to even, we have the luxury of telehealth now. I can't help you if I can't see you. Like, or hear you if you don't have that energy. So like there's absolutely a place and validity for taking medicine when you need it, right? With emotion, because you need to be able to feel to do all the work, right? It's like emotions physically occupying our body. So if I'm completely detached and out of tune with what's going on, I'm not getting anywhere, right? And I'm not getting another chance. I'm not getting younger, right? And watching kids and seeing like how different it is, like to watch my kids growing up and being like, oh yeah, we're past the point where this happened. Oh yeah, we're past the point where that happened, or this or that or the next thing, and seeing how different it is for them growing up. And don't get me wrong, it's daylight savings today, and this morning, oh boy, they did not want to get up and go to school, right? And they were right, dysregulated and emoting, and we managed it. It wasn't the greatest day, but it's sunny. They're going to have recess outside and they're going to come home and it's fresh from the morning. Like they're allowed to feel too and not be happy all the time. Like it's not required. You're so quiet and pensive.
I'm just wondering which way to go next. Um,
Forward.
yeah. Do other Was that your biggest healing moment, or it wasn't a moment, was it? That was that one of the biggest healing changes for you when this decision, and then going through with the name change, reversing
Changing
the
my name,
back.
like changing my name is like one of those fundamental cornerstone things, right? Um, and if you're talking about like having to be numb, right? Because we're brought into families for their need, right? There's This is a rich country. Absolutely, they could change the social welfare systems to support people to keep their families intact, right? Absolutely, it's possible. There's just other
Yeah.
forces at play, right? So with changing my name, right? There's that authenticity. There's being able to like know what's happening physiologically in my body, that like, oh, this is anxiety, feel like a feeling like, oh, this is like the deep sad, recognizing that and being able to express it, right? Because all along the expression came out in the art. I have a love hate with art museums, right? I have a degree in art. I have a degree in like social work. So I'm looking, right? And then this is kind of this like funny, like two sides piece to it. Like I go to an art museum and I'm looking at these things clinically and enjoying the art, but I'm also seeing people's pain, right? If you look at Van Gogh's self-portraits, he is diffuse in the background, right? There's a lot. Like he never made a penny on his paintings, and you can't buy one now unless you're like some rich Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk kind of person, right? So I have like that love hate, but like what's been all along is the art is having, right? I couldn't emote, but I could express, right?
So the art is
Right, because there's the surviving first.
so the art and the expression through art is your second of
Right.
your
Well,
one of them.
it's like they're fundamental pieces that keep the whole in balance.
Yeah. I had a interesting one on this subject of expressing yesterday. So yesterday here in the UK, it was Mother's Day, and me and my mum and my wife
Mhm.
went out for lunch. And she would at one stage, my wife went to the loo, and my mum shared something about actually about my sister, and then she asked me, and she was looking for affirmation that I was okay.
Yeah.
She's looking for affirmation that I was okay, that I was feeling okay, because she's slightly
Mhm.
concerned that, and my wife is actually slightly concerned about spending all this time
Mhm.
with adoptees. and, you know, it taking me down.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't, but they are concerned about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I was thinking about me growing up, and how much freedom I felt to express, uh, given their reaction. I didn't feel I didn't feel like I couldn't express,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm wondering now, did I? Didn't I? I need to give some thought to that.
Yeah.
I to give some thought to that. So, like giving thought to identity and recognizing the different identity journeys, just yours and mine. It's two different things, and you're not trying to shove your solution onto you. I'm not trying to shove my solution. Sorry, you're not trying to shove it onto me, and I'm not trying to shove it onto you.
Right.
We're accepting, and we're accepting each other's journey, and that doesn't happen very often these days.
No, and that is like, this is the micro piece, like the small, right? Because like the conversation we're having, like we've uniquely co-created it right here, right now. It's unlike any other thing in any other moment, right? But if I'm saying like I needed to change my name and you're saying absolutely I did not, to come to a place where I'm like, yeah, that's you. You do you. Like, be happy, dude. I love it. I love that for you. Like, genuinely, right? And like, I know you can see my face and like the listeners cannot, right? But I don't think you doubt like that I'm being genuine.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think by and large, like the macro of it is that's where the adoption community, like adoptees as a whole, need healing together, is to find the like, my healing journey is different from everybody else's, and so is yours, and they are equally valid in that.
And we're focusing on healing. You know, we're focused on healing just by debating, defining our terms. So you were telling me about a conference that you were doing, that you're going to, and
Yeah.
and the focus is understanding.
Yeah.
Because the social workers aren't at yet a point.
Well, I mean,
But
mental health isn't, right? Mental health is not at the like, right? We have to do continuing education because new information, in light of new information, science shifts, right?
yes,
So
and
yeah,
yes,
yes,
yeah,
and right. So like I have a clinical knowledge and I have a lived experience of like, I have come out of like, I had to be in survival mode all the time, nonstop, to a place where like, yeah, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I can thrive, right? And be okay. And then to say, hey, this is a lived experience I have. It is valid information for those of you that don't have this shared lived experience, in light of you being like a genuine ally to help people who do have my lived experience. Cause like I very upfront, like I know people want to hear like adoption is the only thing I treat clinically. It is not. I do not have a caseload of clients working with me that are only adoptees, right? Because I need to self-regulate to be fully present for the ones that I'm helping,
yeah,
right? And I have only so many, right? If I divided my caseload, only so many slots available to do like severe deep trauma work with people, because I am a container for other people's stuff. And if I don't balance it with other things, right, I will sink into it, right? We have to. Self-care is not bookends to my day, it's infused through my day, right? So no, I don't see only adoptees in my practice or only adoptive families, right? But I try very hard not to turn them away. But like if that's all you do, like I know my like brethren adoptee clinicians are tired, right? So like the thing I can do outside is to go present at conferences, not adoption conferences, mental health conferences, to say, hey, like you need to get bare minimum knowledge competency in this,
Yeah.
or you're running a great risk of hurting people. Right? I did not need a therapist to explore, like, what is your adoptive parents going to think about you changing your name? I don't care. It's not about them. It's about me. Like, you need to be present for me. Right? So coming together, like that education and advocacy piece is a whole other like place that I can be articulate about now that maybe 15, 20 years ago I probably could not. Right?
Jean, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, by all means.
I wrote the, you used the word infusion, right? Or you said infuse, I think. I wrote that down on a walk, walking the dog yesterday. So I'm going to leave this as a question for the listeners to ponder. What would it mean, or how would it be like to live a life that's infused with healing?
It's a really beautiful question, right?
Because
Because this is your
we've been infused by trauma.
right.
So what would it be like to live a life
And
that's infused
and
by?
we are as valuable as anyone else, as deserving, as good to enjoy, right? This is our one precious life.
Yeah.
Right? Right. You deserve to have moments of pure joy and beauty, right? Because it like you can't exist in only pain. I don't want people to exist in only pain. Right. But yeah, what would it be like to be infused with healing? Moment to moment briefly is a really like that is a beautiful question.
Yeah. We're going to leave it there. Listeners, thank you very much. Jean, thank you very much. We'll
Thank
speak
you for
again.
having me.
Wonderful to chat with you again. Do this again soon. Take care. Bye.